Hey guys, do subscribe to the channel if you find our content helpful so that we could keep putting out free resources for the less privileged. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at what a market economy is. Um, Now, a market economy is the oldest functioning or the most traditional form of economic system in existence. So this is how initially economies used to operate, or this is how economies started operating, and this was their initial beginning stages. So, how exactly does a market economy function, or how does it operate? For one, a market economy is purely driven by the forces of supply and demand. What that means is you as an individual or your company as an entity had its position purely based off the demand of the products or the services that you provide and the supply of it. So, in simple words, if you provided a product, you as a person, if you had a skill that is of high demand, then you prospered. If you provided a skill or a product that is in oversupply, so a lot of people have the same skill and there's very little demand for it, then you didn't prosper in such a system. So, this system was essentially regulated by that competitive advantage and competitive edge. The more skills that you had, and the more the demand for such skills defined where you stood or what your position was in such an economy. Which brings me to my second point. In such an economy, every action is pretty much driven by self-interest. Another way to think of it is, if you had a company or if you as an individual had a service that you provided, it was purely based off profit based or some kind of transactionary value based, meaning the interest of you providing that service was purely economical, monetary, or it provided you with some kind of a transactional benefit. In layman's terms, every industry and entity was profit based. Which brings me to my final point. In such a system, the government intervention was minimal to absolutely nothing. So the government didn't interfere in the economic activities, they didn't put out policies that curb the economic activities, and they pretty much took a leave it alone approach. Now, there's a very important keyword that you have to keep in mind. This is a French word, and it's called laissez faire. And what that means is essentially leave it alone or let it be the way it is. So, laissez faire. And in a market economy, this is how the governments used to function. So now that we've looked at how a market economy operates, let's have a look at some of the threats or the hazards that's imposed by such an economy. Some of the issues that such an economy might impose. So issues and hazards. Now, from the offsite, you can see, as I mentioned below, if you were a person who was highly skilled and you were providing a service that was in very less supply and high demand, it made you prosper. Now, the issue is, if you were someone who didn't have a skill set that was in demand or was in oversupply, it meant that it would lower your purchasing parity or your power. In short words, people with smaller skills or people with skill sets that are in oversupply did extremely bad in this kind of a competitive advantage. Which brings me to the second one. There was minimal to no contributions as far as a government or a state operated welfare or benefits go. Every government tends to have some kind of welfare packages or some kind of benefits packages that are in place to help in issues like natural calamities or high unemployment or inflation rises. In such a market economy, when it's pure market economy, there was minimal to no government interventions, and the entire economy was ruled, as I said, by supply and demand. Now, the lower purchasing parity and the very minimal support from a government or state welfare meant essentially that the income inequality would increase. So, in layman's terms, the rich would get richer, but the poor would get poorer, and that disparity or that widening gap would would increase at an alarming or a rapid pace, bringing two different strata of economic entities.